beautiful creatures of the world, and welcome back to Coffee with Kerri-Lynn. It's Friday. I get to do my favorite episode of the week. We get to leave all the reality nonsense behind. We get to explore the unexplained here on my show. We get to talk about history's mysteries, the lost city of Atlantis, how the Egyptian pyramids were built, why were they built. We get to talk about UFOs, interdimensional travel, glitches in the Matrix. I like a good thriller. I like a good paranormal story. I like talking about the supernatural, unexplained crimes, unsolved mysteries. Love them too. And I especially love people who have real stories about real events that they cannot explain in their lives. They don't even tell these stories to friends and family because they don't want to be seen as the weird person. I'm the weird girl. I've always been the weird girl. I will always be the weird girl, and I have the weird stories. Now it's time to let our hair down, think outside the box, let our imaginations wander. Take the burdens of the week off your shoulders, even if it's for a little while. Go into the weekend with a lighter heart in a more joyous mood. I promise you, all the shenanigans that you did not resolve this week will be waiting for you on Monday. That's why we call it Manic Monday. If you are joining me on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, or YouTube Music, think about following my podcast. It's a variety show. We talk about different things all throughout the week. And on Fridays, we have Freaky Friday. Think about giving me a 5-star rating. Doesn't cost you guys anything, but it does boost me up in the algorithm. I am not monetized on any of the audio-only platforms. If you are watching me on YouTube, and it is the premiere. We love premiering this show because that means I am live in the comments and you can comment in live time. We can have a conversation live. We do have moderators and we do have filters on our comment section. So please be mindful, please be respectful, and please be kind when you are leaving a comment. If you are not watching the premiere, then I'm not live in the comments. After we premiere the show, it does go up as a regular video podcast. But if you are not watching the premiere, please think about subscribing to my channel. Give me a thumbs up, give me a thumbs down. Any attention on YouTube is good attention. Now let's jump right into today's story. Today we are going to talk about the New England vampire hysteria. New England is the oldest part of the country, and it is filled with some horrifying historical stories, supernatural stories that turn out to be not as supernatural as people of the time thought. Back in the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, right, coming into the 1900s, people still lived their lives very simply, and they lived their life lessons through folklore. They also did a lot of medical through herbalism. They didn't have medicine like we have today. Today we have Elon Musk. He's putting an implant in your brain and miracles are happening. But back then, they were simple medical miracles, such as the discovery of vaccines. That was the thing of the time. How we view Neuralink today is the excitement that they viewed vaccinations way back when times were simpler. They were simple people. They weren't simpletons. They were naive. And they had a lot of religious pressure on them. So in order to prevent children and people from making mistakes and living immorally, folk laws were invented to keep people on the straight and narrow. In 1692, in New England, in Salem, we had the witch hysteria, and that was absolutely brutal. 200 people perished in that hysteria. Now, fast forward a few hundred years later, scientific experiments have been conducted, and they have determined that the outcome of that hysteria, the witch hysteria in Salem, was in fact rye that had molded, had been consumed, and people went off on a trip, you know what I mean? They were seeing things, they were feeling things that weren't happening. And what could those girls that accused people of being witches do. They had a lot of guilt on their minds, on their souls, on their hearts. The only thing that they really could do was continue with the hysterics. And of course, you have mass hysteria that did crop up from that, and it spread throughout all of New England. Salem was not the only place that persecuted witches. My family has a very old background in New England. I am the 13th generation great-granddaughter of Samuel Gorton. He was persecuted in England in the 1600s for his religious beliefs. He came to the colonies, he came to Massachusetts, and Massachusetts persecuted him for his religious beliefs. So he escaped to Rhode Island and began his own religion, Gortonism. And we'll dive into that at another time. But he also, at the behest of his friend Roger Williams, my great 13 generations back, granddaddy overthrew the crown not once, but twice. And he sent William Coddington packing. And you wonder where the rebellious streak comes from. Ladies and gentlemen, beautiful creatures of the world, today I want to talk about the vampire hysteria of New England. Our last vampire of New England was 19-year-old Mercy Lena Brown from Exeter, Rhode Island. George Brown was a farmer, and he married his wife, Mary. They had a lovely life in Exeter, Rhode Island, on their farm. They raised 3 children, Mary, Edwin, and Mercy. In the 1880s, the mother, Mary Brown, and also the daughter, Mary Brown, contracted consumption, or tuberculosis as we call it in our modern time. They got TB. Back then it was called consumption. It was the wasting disease. Mary Brown passed away, and shortly thereafter, her daughter, Mary Brown, in 1884, succumbed to the tuberculosis. In 1891, Edwin Brown, the son of George Brown, and Mercy Brown, the daughter of George Brown, both contracted consumption. Edwin was sent away to the Colorado Springs with his wife in hopes that he would recover when he began showing symptoms. At the time, Mercy Brown did not show any symptoms of having contracted the disease. Edwin Brown seemed to make a bit of a recovery when he was out in Colorado, but unfortunately that recovery was short-lived. He fell ill again, and he and his wife were sent back to Exeter, Rhode Island, where he would live out his days until his passing. In 1892, on January 17th, Mercy Brown passed away from consumption at the age of 19 years old. Edwin was still doing very poorly. The townsfolk were seeing other cases of consumption in the area, so they decided in their simple folklore ways that Mercy Brown was a vampire, and she was causing people in her community, including her brother, to waste away to death. On March 17th, 1892, a local doctor persuaded George Brown to allow him to exhume the bodies of his wife Mary, his daughter Mary, and his daughter Mercy Brown, who had just recently passed away. George was a religious man, but there was a lot of pressure throughout the town, and so he allowed them with great reservation to exhume his wife and his 2 daughters. The good doctor took with him to the exhumation a small group of people whom the doctor trusted, including a journalist of the time. and he dug up Mary Brown and her daughter Mary Brown, checked out the bodies, and they were showing normal signs of decomposition for the amount of time that they had been buried. However, when he exhumed Mercy Brown, who had now just passed away, mind you, 3 months prior, she was not showing any signs of decomposition, and so he decided that she is a vampire. Using the lores and the legends of the time, their naive way, the doctor deemed that Mercy Brown was in fact causing the issues with the consumption in the town of Exeter, and he removed her heart, which they found that the heart was full of blood. They ended up burning the heart and burying the heart separately from Mercy Brown's body, and that basically concludes the story. Edwin Brown, he does pass away after they exhume his sister, and the local lore and the local legend was that Mercy Brown was indeed a vampire. Now, George Brown, he never bought into that train of thought. Although he allowed his daughter's body to be desecrated, he felt it was kind of better for the town people, put all the fear to rest. George Brown never spoke of the exhumation of his daughter Mercy. He never spoke of her being a vampire. He never gave any statements to the journalist, and he went about his business and lived his life out on his farm in Exeter. He ended up never contracting tuberculosis or consumption, and he lived until 1922. Now, that being said, when you start thinking about the dates and you start thinking about who passed away first and who subsequently passed away, and the fact that George Brown, the father, never contracted tuberculosis, you might think that people would have accused George of being the vampire, but in fact they did accuse poor Mercy Lena Brown, who died at the age of 19, and that's just how life was back there. It was a true circle of life and death, living close to the land, and when people could not understand occurrences in life, folklore, legends, they were made up, they were devised, they were spread throughout the lands, the stories and the tales, and without the proper scientific explanations, things were really, truly, everyday things in life were truly unexplained mysteries to the people of that time. As I said, we know better now. We're already amazed and we marvel at Elon Musk's Neuralink. It is absolutely a wild invention to allow paralyzed people to be able to regain their life and their body control again. And back then, in the 1700s and 1800s, bloodletting was still a thing, ladies and gentlemen, and smallpox vaccinations were new. They were they were the it thing. They were, when the discovery of penicillin, that was equivalent at that time to Neuralink of today. So just think about that for a little while. Ladies and gentlemen, beautiful creatures of the world, I want to thank you for joining me today on my Freaky Friday podcast. If you have any stories that you would like to share, please feel free to share them in the comment section below. Ladies and gentlemen, beautiful creatures of the world, carpe diem, because no one promised you a tomorrow.